because Dan Bouchard came, and on the outside chance that Dan was going to come, I have Sherry Mangan, and we had discussed Sherry Mangan in an email. He was a poet from Lynn. 1930s was probably when he really flourished, although he continued to write into the 50s. So I just want to read a Sherry Mangan poem about the Spanish Civil War. It's called Activist Miliciano. As he felt the wall against his back and against the back of his head, he suddenly thought, the glint of sun I see on those rifles is the last glint of sun I shall see on rifles or anything else. The thought seemed to him too personal for this moment, which, with 300 others coming after him, the counter-offensive broken, and the loss of 4 towns, was more than merely individual. But he was no theoretician, had no last words, and even when he heard the snick of the bolts clicking into place, all he could think was, I did the best I could, so it's all right. But after a life at it, it's hard not to be here to see how it all came out. Sherry Mangan. And because no one knows who Robert Gessner was, I decided to read a beginning of a Robert Gessner poem. Before there was Allen Ginsberg, there was Robert Gessner. That's how I feel about it. And I have a sense that this book, Upsurge, would have circulated in the very kinds of households that Ginsberg grew up in. His father was, Louis Ginsberg was a poet affiliated with the New Masses magazine and those circles in New York. So I thought, reading this, I'm like, damn, Ginsberg had to have read this book and this poem, so let me just read the first couple stanzas. Look, we are the Depression bastards. You of America, our fathers, look at us. We're grammar school kids with smudgy knees, high school boys in long pants, and college graduates with whole alphabets of sweaters. We're in our 20s. We're under 20. We're any age, year, month, week you can think of. See our faces and our bodies. We're older, you say? Well, sirs and ladies, if you're so damn nosy, we're the youngest old men in the world. We've eaten tin can stew, tin can Java, tin can soup inside the jungles of America. We've slept in rain-soaked gondolas, across ice-caked bars, on top of wind-beaten boxes, hitting the dirt and pavements of America. We know El Paso's yards like we know what's inside your hat. Know to take the Texas out, not the San Antone. Know to catch the Mopac, east from Fort Worth, and the Bulls in Barstow who chase us from the Santa Fe to the UP and the UP Bulls who chase us back, and the tank towns out of Council Bluffs, Pontiac, Baton Rouge, where the shotgun constables lead all freights to see we don't unload for grub. When will you stop this runaround, you older brothers, you big-hearted cousins? When will your stinking charities stop? We've been given the runaround across your private continent 3 times, 4 times, 10. A muddy sewer across your goddamn continent. We don't steal your railroads or harm our Pullman floors. We love our comfort, even when we're found locked in after a 3-day run, froze stiff as your heart. Our bodies slam against roaring manifests when we grab rungs and have the strength to hang on. Our tangled legs are kicked in sleep, eyes dazzled by flashlights, brains battered by questions that separate us, rape the girls in overalls, and chain gang us, and so does death. Yes, we're killed. The wheels are magnets, suck in toes, crunch ankles, chew off knees. And the cops got guns that answer any backtop.
Ooh.
Yeah. Robert Gessner, right? And because I think that part of the poet's job is to be a recorder in some way, to pay attention, mark down what other people don't see. The last of the recovered poets of tonight will be Norman MacLeod, who ran a literary magazine in New Mexico in the 1930s. Another totally forgotten guy. But this is just an act of recording that I want to act in the spirit of. It's called Item. Alexander MacLeod, Soviet citizen. Take this pink paper and from there recall how in the revolution's recessional Alexander MacLeod came up from Alma Ati the duplex of his deep bronze shoulders riding his crutches like rocking horses, and he picked me up at the new Moscow Hotel across the river from the Kremlin towers and took me down to the underground with legend in his heart like flowers. They have carried the old Bolsheviks in neat squares like peat to the fire. I wonder what happened to Lydia, who spied on left-wing foreigners. The pivo we drank, Alexander and I, was like green running water. But the world is dead, I remember, and Alexander dropped out of sight. I should like to say a few words. I'd like to put his name in the record. Okay. Sure, I'm just... Okay. So just in terms of documentary poems, I went through the Gloucester Daily Times from the fall of 1980 and began writing things down just to reconstruct the sense of what living in this town was when I was a little kid. Which Peter asked us, geez, man, you were heroic in those years. Okay.
Many citations.
Yeah. This book, I'll cut it short. Let's start with lesbian marriage ruled illegal. All the income from whiting, which ran into the thousands of dollars, has been lost. What is the answer? Can the whiting and haddock make a comeback? I believe yes. Must stop issuing permits to all foreign countries as soon as possible, and also enforce no less than a 3-inch mesh net along the Atlantic coast so that our fishing grounds can replenish themselves in 10 years. 2 residents had the frightening experience of being awakened by burglars inside their home during the night. Spray 2 unloaded 50,000 pounds mixed fish at Star Fisheries. Santa Maria, 35,000 mixed at Star Fisheries. Gaetano S, 35,000 whiting, Star Fisheries. The committee took no action on the Star Fisheries Inc. application to store ammonia at its facility on Harbor Loop.
No action.
No action. Cod haddock quotas maintained. Computers enter mass market. Accused of stabbing 25-year-old Frank Tyne in a fight in a parking lot on the West End, Mrs. Hurlburt said, will be information on cults, including the Unification Church, and a lending library of books on the subject. Claiming the reorganization was done to eliminate his job because the agency objected to his active support of rent control. Reagan still leads in the polls. Iraq captures big oil port. Female wanted, part-time, 2 hours a day. Wednesday, October 8th, a 3rd man was arrested at gunpoint but has not been charged with any offenses related to the kidnapping and robbery of Helen Blanchard of 9 Farrington Avenue. She and her husband, William E. Blanchard Jr., owner of Blanchard's jewelry store, were watching television on the 1st floor of their home when 2 young men, wearing ski masks and carrying automatic pistols, entered the 2nd floor around 10:10 p.m. She used her teeth to free the ropes binding her hands in front of her body and started the station wagon. She remembers going through a field, probably at the Fuller School, and then heading down Route 128 toward Grant Circle on the wrong side of the highway. Yeah. The mental toxicity of Gloucester in like 1980. Fall of 1980. Okay. I'm putting that away. So, yeah, Donald Wellman mentioned Donald Wellman. Okay. Not just you, James. I didn't mention Don. Yeah, I read a lot of Donald Wellman, and so I guess this is a run of poems that would be not too dissimilar from maybe some things that Don has written. I'm going to get right to it, though. Okay. One Gloucester one. Clarence Fault, who lived at 172 East Main. Clarence Fault, at the age of 50, dead from a cerebral hemorrhage, 5 a.m. on the morning of May 13th, 1912. The house he had shared with his brother Austin, a longshoreman, and 3 sisters, all including Clarence, unmarried. Their father, Walter Fault, widower, was born in Nova Scotia. He was a day laborer, on fish, according to the 1900 census, out of work 8 months. Clarence Fault wrote that the Riverdale willows, which above the road from either side of the road touched an appointed arcade to the cove, and of which, from the stand he photographed around 1894, several gnarled specimens survive, were sylvan votarists animating him from sleep. Clarence Fault watched sails of schooners and salt barks, imagined mighty castles and the lyres of court from his vantage on Niles Beach, and dreamt of feudal days of old, Today the screen of willows is echoed in the name of a fuel station and grocery near the old level run sun once filtered through, which Clarence Fault called a colonnade. He populated Riverdale with Shakespeare's characters. Romeo's leg and hose swung over the New England stone wall to steal from the orchard. Bowers bob in the wind from the bay, and the lavender mist he wrote, old, growth, and mature, were parted by the child Juliet, who from the green casement above the dirt road leading to the granite quarry looked down, already weeping and tearing her eyes. The bats, wrote Clarence Fault, streamed behind them, a water hot and foul-smelling, but nowhere in his poem did Fault record the boom and tremor of earth from Halibut Point in Lanesville, when the quarrymaster detonated TNT and the mother stone, like a glacier, let drop another sheet. He placed Pan like a humble figurine in russet pleats on a low bent branch, and filed the willows in rows of nuns, whispering the mysteries of Mary. Ye sylvan votarists of God, ye sylvan votarists of God. Printed by the author, the poems were sold in souvenir editions, cream stamped in gilt. Clarence Fault had 10 years to live when, in 1902, he published Wharf and Fleet with Little Brown. He wrote about cod spread on East Gloucester racks dropped the Bard. The Trapani salt barks tied up at Gorton Pew were damp with mold, the payoff of pittance for longshoremen, like Austin Fault, who signed his brother's death certificate in May of 1912. From the hold, salt hissed the hiss of a hydra, wrote Clarence Fault, extinguished breath, but the shovels continued to clank. He knew that the work glove slid on in the morning was heavy with yesterday's sweat, that the fish cutter made between 35 and 40 cents per 100 pound of fish, and that the movement of the cut was a figure 8 repeated. So my great-grandparents came to Gloucester from the Sicilian city of Milazzo, which is slightly to the west of Messina, in the province of Messina. And now that their children, my grandparents, are dead, I've inherited some things, including net designs that my great-grandfather made and would share with people on Fort Square without charging them, and encouraging them to use what he thought would improve designs. And I've been trying to imaginatively put myself in Sicily with poems. And I've been throwing myself into a whole range of Sicilian poetry and literature, but not the literature that you might be able to find more easily, like Verga or Pirandello, or writers. I'm going to earlier writers who were optimistic about the revolutionary possibilities of Garibaldi, before the pessimism, before the corruption of that, and trying to get back to that. And all of this is on Google Books because no one cares to publish it. So, and I'm translating it myself for my own use. But I'll just do this actually earlier. So this is from the 1500s. This was a poet named Antonio Veneziano who shared a jail cell with Cervantes. And this is my own translation. Friends, friends, cauldrons, cauldrons, deliver cauldrons of simmering lie, lie which draws from clenched eyes, baubles of salt which flee the curve of seared cheeks, fistfuls of cold ash which transform our breath into labor, to make more viscous the mixture, down to the last and meanest I once scrubbed my shrouds from the vicaria. Hurry, hurry, all expert comb makers, deliver to me fashioned from multicolored horn, every last comb, horn in a caramel tone of seasoned hide, black horn, which yields to feathered wisps of orange, as when, after break of dawn, brisk clouds, feathered thin by virtue of their speed, like brushes, sweep the curve of a dimly lit sky. And if the suppliers be bereft of horn, follow my instruction. Find a serrated blade and wrench it into the cuckold's horns of those who entombed me in the notorious prison of Vicaria. And I really want to get to listen to Rich, so I'm going to jump to my last poem today. And this is kind of my own Baroque-ish manifesto, but clearly not a manifesto. It's a semi-translated, primarily invented, open letter from a poet to a painter, from Ugo Antonio Amico, who was from Erice, which is on the west coast of Sicily, to the painter Francesco Liacono. And I've entirely, I've reinvented the translation and taken it in other directions. But it's as much as on the Baroque as I can say, I guess. In this jovial hour, Francesco, in which my middle age begins, let me deliver verses to you, O painter. You know I can extemporize on art as it appears in nature because I daub with your pigments the eternal beauty of forms which change, signifying universal causes inscribed in a splendid shift of appearances. Oh, if I could but once derive from the unsettled palette of your enduring canvases more than my disordered hymns, rhythms less confused for your ears to receive, please, kind man, accommodate a song that can stir the heart. It is for you, as it is for me, an intimate affection binds me to that which art educates and love ripens. Human lips were offered, arte ed amore, but never has so molten a voice, though mindful of virtue, been able to stop itself. And what vatic heart has, other than by her sacred art, ever risen? Like one in love who from an abundant sky of diverse blue restricts his sight. A fragment of infinite light is revealed to me. Everything emerges from a soul which animates 1,000 former and future worlds. For me are opened abysses of clashing shadow in frightful hymn, and the splendor of any clear radius is obscured to me. Goddess arbiter who silences the lute and unrestrains discordant shadows from the fringes of light, amorous phantasms capricious in spirit and color. Through this authentic and originary goddess, I will consecrate to you my admiring mind, O friend, and she will one day lead you from the ripples of the riverbank to the sea. It was the first hour of dawn. From oriental direction burned a luminous sun. Amid this inebriated vista of strange beauty, first appeared to you the curved embankment of the sealed-off orchard, prodded in vain by antiquarians who search for remnants of the Solentine wall, and that other band of earth which is a yoke of bristles. Oh, tell me, discerning maker, on some imaginary occasion in which we find ourselves in untroubled flower beds of spring, where you might lower your guard, where florets and grasses, sprouting in the benevolent and mild exhalations of the west wind, will ripple their 1,000 colors, their 1,000 lustrous fluctuations, but they will smile on you never so majestically as will the aerial vestments of a most lightsome sky, the ocean so blue, so unconstrained the vivid little flowers, as when with incandescent eyes she told you, apply with your brushes these pigments. From the imponderable flare, our ball of dirt and metal ore revolves around in ellipsis, making with each parabolic turn a migrating center which is a void. Take striations of white fire, which jolt aerial molecules into graded bands of color, and from the mountain that veils itself in forest, the yellow-green of sun-saturated foliage, hemmed with verdigris, that hides with its skirt a register of void, the height of a man. There you will find sufficient shadow